Hi guys, this is Jacqui Cooper, and today we are doing another part of our series on dogs and pet travel, and I have Angela today here with me. Angela, in case you haven't heard any part of the series before, she has the Canine Online Academy, and she is a wonderful trainer. She's able to provide Zoom trainings anywhere in the world. So as we talk about these topics like pet hotels, how do you find them, pet insurance, all these other things, today's topic is going to be airline travel with your pet. Angela, thanks so much for coming back on. How are you doing today?
Hi, good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So today's topic is going to be about airlines. Now, there's many different levels of training within airlines. So within an airline, you might have a pet that is a family member. You might have a pet that is an emotional support dog. You might have a pet that's a service animal. Those are three different categories. Do all those pets need specific training? Talk to me more about what's involved.
Yes, absolutely. So, as far as a service dog goes, they're generally already trained when the person acquires them for a specific need. So, those guys are usually allowed in any public facility and on an airplane. So, no worries there. With an ESA, which is an emotional support animal, you do need paperwork. And sometimes I would say certain dogs are a little undertrained, in my opinion, to be flying on an airplane. So I always encourage everyone to at least have enough training to be able to pass the Canine Good Citizen, which is an AKC title test, or potentially even the next level, which is the advanced level of that. And if my clients have both of those, then I'm comfortable with them being in that type of environment. I would say the same thing goes for just a personal pet that's not an ESA. In that case, the big one's going to be more barking, because when you're taking them as a carry-on, they're going to be in a kennel and not just free in the plane.
Yep, we're going to talk about that. I know that on a variety of different resources that I've been looking at, and by the way, guys, we do have a checklist that's free, so just reach out to us so we can share it with you. On a variety of different websites, they all talk about the need to plan ahead, because especially if you have a dog that you're going to be traveling with, every airline, especially these days, are changing their rules as to what they'll allow, whether they will allow the dog to go in the cargo area, whether, and we're going to talk about this, they're considered carry-on. So they all have different rules. I know that you have a story that you told me about one of the clients, and he wasn't expecting it. He was going through one of the security places. Can you talk more about why this type of training is so valuable? Because unexpected things happen. And go tell the story, because I think it will kind of show everyone why it's so important.
I do love this story. I had a client that had worked with me for a long time, and his dog was very well trained, and he was taking his dog on the plane, and he got to the security station, and they're like, okay, take everything off, take the collar off, take the leash off, put everything in the bin, slide it through, walk through the metal detector, and leave your dog on this side of the metal detector. And he was like, what? He's not expecting this. And so he does, and then he calls her through the metal detector, which is what they had asked for him to do. And she did it. And he came back to me and he was like, I have to thank you, because, we did this. She did an excellent job. Without all of this training, that wouldn't have been possible. And he was very excited to tell me. And I was super excited to hear it. But I'm also thinking, what if you had a dog that wasn't trained to that level, and then your dog's running through the airport with no collar on? Can you even imagine, like, how stressful that would be? So I was so excited that his dog was just perfect behavior. in the
Yeah.
airport.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know, and you and I have talked about this, again, if I had Gudu, which is my little dog, she's super friendly with everyone. If she was in an airport setting, she would be, and she's super fast. If she didn't have, even though she follows the command of wait, if she saw something that, caught her eye, she'd be off and I would not be able to catch her. So it just brings home the fact that I have to, even in the stay home position that I'm in right now working, I definitely have to spend more time on the Zoom call with you training. So I'm looking at an example of a airline, American Airlines, for example, but all of them are the same. So they talk about how, and some of this language makes me laugh, but they say checked pet services suspended. So basically, they are not allowing any cargo. That's the way I'm interpreting it. But let's talk about the fact that when they allow cargo again, what kind of things do we need to think about for training our pet who is going to be in the cargo, which is a very stressful time period? What kind of training would you provide to help kind of ease that?
I would want to you really, really plan ahead of time, because your airlines are very specific about the actual crate or container that you're using. So the dimensions have to be just so. There's a lot of regulations. So first off, you need, as soon as you're ready to book, you need to call them and find out what the requirements are. I would then go acquire whatever crate you're using, and like they're specific down to the 1/2 inch on most of these things, what size you're able to take. So then you need to go find the appropriate size that your dog will actually fit inside. And then I would want them to be really comfortable being in there. I'm going to make it a happy place in the house. I'm going to throw lots of fun things in there. I want them to be really comfortable in this, but you see how much time it's going to take you to get, make sure you have the right size, then get your dog accustomed to it. So you don't want to do this like 2 days before you're flying out.
Yeah, for sure. So then the next category of allowing a pet on a plane is called carry-on. And so we've talked about the fact that there are dogs that will be in a crate and dogs that won't be in a crate. So if your dog is in a crate, those dogs are considered checked pets. And they have to have, like you said, a certain size crate. They're on American Airlines. I'm just scrolling down just as an example. They talk about also there are certain pet restrictions. Some dogs are not allowed to be on the plane at all because of weight and size, or because of breed. So do you want to talk anything at all about that?
Sure. Like I said, once again, if you're traveling, make sure you check. Every airline will have different regulations. I've had tons of customers that are either flying with their pet or, have an ESA or whatever the case is. They are very, very strict about it, that you literally will not be able to fly if you're not within their regulations. So double check again, check a third time, make sure you know the requirements.
And tied to that, some of the airlines also, in addition to the crate that we're going to talk about, they also require certain medical documents. They need to make sure and I'm not talking about overseas travel, I'm talking about local travel, because overseas, then you're going to be dealing with pet passports and things like that. Here locally, they're going to want to know that you have a certain type of veterinarian that's certified, that has given your dog is up to date with shots and everything else like that. So they might want to know that you have all the proper pet papers. Having a certification that the dog is a good citizen certainly is a win-win situation too, because it's showing the airlines that your dog is going to maintain, a certain level of respect for fellow passengers. I know you and I talked before we got on that you might have your dog on your lap if it's a small dog, but people might want to pet it. So you were saying that there's certain things that people need to be aware of. Do you want to talk about, like, you're waiting in the waiting room before you get on the plane? What should they be thinking about?
Well, as long as your dog is trained, I work with a lot of therapy dogs, so those dogs are very outgoing and they like people, and you know, they're they're great. And I think they would be excellent in that situation. But if you say you have a dog that doesn't necessarily like kids, but maybe you're flying with it, and there's a bunch of kids in the airport that day, there are little things that you can get to slip on your leash, and they say do not pet. Things like that. You want to be thinking ahead. That gives a great indicator to somebody with kids. Hey, don't pet this dog. So there's also vests that you can get. There's different things you can get to indicate if you do have that sort of situation with your dog where, I'm not really comfortable with people approaching my dog, or maybe it's not that your dog is aggressive or anything like that, but maybe your dog gets super excited and to an overexcited extent where that's not going to be conducive to a great plane ride either.
Yeah. And the other thing that we talked about too is that different airlines have different rules as to where the dogs can go to the bathroom to relieve themselves. So you need to find that out too, because just like you plan for you also have to plan food and water and the basics for our dog friends. So I'm looking at the American Airline, and their kennel requirements are pretty specific. Like you said, pets must be able to stand, sit, erect, and turn around in a natural position. If it's non-collapsible, it can't exceed under seat dimensions. If it's a soft collapsible, again, it has certain dimensions. So you're right. You need to be able to make sure you have the right one. And like you were saying with the cargo, you want to make sure that the pets are comfortable staying in there for long time periods, because your flight could be an hour or 3 hours. So do you train with that, or what other hints can you provide on that?
I would if I'm going to do cargo, I would want to make sure that my dog is just super comfortable being in there, because I don't want them to have a lot of anxiety. I don't want this to be super stressful. I mean, it's going to be stressful to some extent, but we don't want it to be overwhelming for the dog. So we want them used to being in that type of environment. If you're going to have carry-on and you're doing a smaller carrier, you want to make sure that they're able to get in there and lay down and be comfortable, because it is a pretty restricted area when you're taking a carry-on. Those are very, very small. So basically, I would just say comfort is key when it comes to the kennel piece.
Yep, for sure. I'm looking again at the airline just to give us a sample, and they're talking about timelines. So they're talking about the fact that if you are actually carrying on your pet, you cannot have another carry-on. You can have a bag, but basically your pet is your carry-on. So you're limited with the amount of things that you personally could carry on. And then it also talks about how you need to call the airline, at least, well, this is the reservations, at least 48 hours prior to travel. But they also say ensure the health and safety of the pet. The health certificate that you must provide must be issued by a vet within 10 days of your travel and 60 days of your return. And so if you are staying somewhere, you're going to also have to think about a vet certificate on the other side, because they want to make sure that wherever you went, that your pet is staying healthy and then can get back on the plane. And then it talks about 10 days of your return. So again, there are all these different timeline requirements. So like you said, you really have to check. So any other things that you can think of? What about sedation? I know you have you had clients that have used that for their pets?
I'm sorry, used what?
Sedation, some medicine.
Oh, yeah. Some people that their dogs may already have medication, even just for traveling in the car. I know, basic, even people stuff. Sometimes vets will recommend just to kind of take the edge off, or if your dog gets nervous or upset stomach sort of thing. There's a lot of different medications. You definitely want to check with your vet and see if they recommend that. That would be something you definitely want to have that discussion with them. Along those lines, though, with the medical records, like you were saying, just having your dog up to date doesn't count as the health record. So you do have to have a separate appointment. Your dog can be completely up to date, but you have to have a clean bill of health from the vet in order to fly. So that's something else you want to think about. Like you were saying, that's what they're talking about when they're saying 10 days, not just your vet records.
Yeah.
But an actual paper from the vet.
Yeah, there's a lot of pre-planning. The other thing that I clicked on here is that if you are not flying direct, if you have a stopover, there are different rules for that. And so like American Airlines said, if you're traveling on a connecting flight with a checked pet, then you can only go through certain cities. So you need to even, prior to buying the ticket, you need to check with the airline to see, okay, if I go from this point to this point, if you don't have a direct flight, what city can I navigate through so that way I can not have any problems with my pet? So those are, and there'll be different charges. And the other thing that you had mentioned, there's temperature restrictions. So tell me more about that. I remember you mentioned that too.
Yeah, they won't fly if you're using cargo. There are certain temperature requirements. So if the temperature is too high or too low, they won't fly cargo. So if you're planning on that and you have the trip planned and you're like, my dog's going this way, and then the temperature is too hot or too cold, you may have to make alternate plans because that doesn't always work out. And as far, I thought about something else too, as far as the carrier goes, and this has actually happened to people. I've been in the pet industry for a long time selling pet products, and sometimes you'll find carriers for carry-on. It'll say airline approved. That does not mean every airline will take that carrier. Just FYI.
Well,
I've had people actually try that and they were not happy when they got to the airport and they're like, this isn't going to work.
Well, it's no different than luggage. Sometimes different airlines have different size luggage requirements. So it really is important to make sure what is the exact dimensions, like you said. So again, I'm going to go back to the idea that you have a very flexible training model because you are able to do Zoom. That means you can train anytime, anywhere, anyone is, anywhere globally. And you're able to train both individual dogs as well as group dogs. And I know we've talked about this, you're able to kind of customize. So usually if someone is planning a trip, about how far in advance should they, I know you do free consults, how far in advance should they reach out to you so that way you can see what their needs might be to make sure that they get all the training that they need? What would you recommend to them?
Ideally, especially if you're an avid traveler, you want to reach out as soon as you get your dog or your puppy, or as soon as you even think I might want to travel with my dog, because especially if you're trying to do in-flight, and take your dog with you, it requires quite a bit of training. So when you're working with behavior modifications and things like that, it's not an overnight process. So as soon as you can possibly get in, you want to start working on that. And no matter what, the more you train, the better off, your pet's behavior is going to be. So as soon as you can, definitely.
So guys, anyway, we appreciate your, continuing to follow our podcast about dog training and about different tips. Angela, thank you so much for being here today. Remember to reach back out to us. We do have all these freebies that we've created as checklists for you, and we'd love to share them with you. Any last minute thoughts, Angela, that you can think of?
No, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.